quality development, and he created a program called Building Pathways that has become a model for increasing diversity in the workplace and providing good career opportunities for women and people of color. Before taking office, Mayor Walsh served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives, where he was a leader on job creation and worker protection, substance abuse, mental health, and homelessness, K-12 education, and civil rights. Born and raised in the neighborhood of Dorchester by immigrant parents, Mayor Walsh is driven to make sure Boston is a city where anyone can overcome their challenges and fulfill their dreams. As a child, Mayor Walsh survived a serious bout of Burkitt lymphoma, thanks to the extraordinary care he received at Boston Children's Hospital and Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. His recovery from alcoholism as a young adult led to his lifelong commitment to the prevention and treatment of addiction. And while working full-time as a legislator, he returned to school to earn a degree in political science at Boston College. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the Mayor of Boston, one of our hosts for this morning breakfast, Mayor Marty Walsh.
Thank you very much, Gus, and thank you, Democrats. It's great to hear the stories of the past. It's great to hear names from the past, people who helped build our party. Quite honestly, here in Massachusetts, and we have a strong party in Massachusetts. We have a very robust Democratic Party. We generally get very active in campaigns, and we have loads of opinions, and that's a good thing. And today we're on the same page. We're on the same page for the Biden-Harris ticket. And I want to thank Gus and his work at the party. He's done amazing work here. Thank you, Gus, very much for all you do. To all the committee members, to all the guests on the call today. You know, I was asked to just say a couple words, and I guess about Vice President Biden. And I met Vice President Biden for the first time back around 1998, and he was a senator, and I think he was running for president, and an event that was in town, and it was my first time getting a chance to meet him head on head. And he just seemed like a regular guy, like he was from one of our neighborhoods. And the next time I saw him, I had a conversation with him again, and he remembered my name, and again that same conversation. Joe Biden is at this time, we all know this, he's the right person, excuse me, to lead our country. And it's incumbent upon all of us that we do everything we can in our power to make sure that Joe Biden is the president. These last 3.5 years, I know everyone knows this on this call, but they've been brutal. They've been brutal in so many different ways. You know, I've served as mayor of Boston since 2014. Prior to that, I was one of the members of the legislature, and I worked with the speaker. And it was watching what's going on in politics today, and watching what's going on with the heart of our country. Donald Trump has done everything to rip that heart out. And quite honestly, when you think about people running at certain times, I honestly feel there's no coincidences. I just want to tell you a quick story. So 2014, I got sworn in as mayor of Boston. And in April of 2014 was the 1-year anniversary of the marathon bombing. And in that anniversary, Vice President Biden came to Boston for the memorial service of the 1-year anniversary. And that morning of the memorial, as he was ready to fly in, I had a breakfast in the morning with families who lost their loved ones on that horrible day. And I had to go to the airport. I was going to meet the vice president on the tarmac. I had never done that. Henry Richard was there, Martin's brother. Henry, I've known him forever. And I asked Bill and Denise if I could take him with me to meet the vice president. And they said, sure, if he'll go. I don't think he'll go. And I asked Henry if he wanted to come, and he said, yes. So Henry got in the car with me, and we drove over to the airport, myself, Laurie, and Henry. And we got to the airport, and they took us inside the building. And then as Air Force Two landed, we walked out onto the tarmac, and Governor Patrick was there, and Diane was there. And we were standing at the bottom of the ladder as the waiting for the vice president to come down the stairs. And as the vice president came down the stairs, he stopped to the governor and shook his hand, and they talked for a few moments. And he stopped to Diane and talked to Diane, and then Laurie was next, and he said hello to Laurie. And then he saw Henry, and he put his two hands on Henry, and he leaned into Henry and just gave Henry a kiss on the forehead. And he said, how you doing, my friend? And he talked about his own loss. He talked about losing his wife and his daughter. He talked about the sadness that his two boys had to go through with losing their sister and their mom. And then he took Henry back up on the plane, and he put Henry into the cockpit, and he put Henry into the vice president's chair, and he opened his briefing book, and he said to Henry, you know, you're the vice president right now, and I'm your assistant, and he went through this whole story. And then afterwards, when they got off the Air Force Two, he took Henry in the limousine or the car that he was taking, and they came to the presidential library. And the reason why I tell you that story today is because Joe Biden had a genuine love and a care for Henry Richard. And then when he got to the memorial service, he met with the families who lost loved ones, and he had a genuine care for the families who lost loved ones. And then when he got up and spoke to the survivors, he had a genuine care for the survivors. He wasn't a politician giving a speech. He wasn't somebody running for office. He was a father who experienced tragedy. He was a father that wanted to heal those folks in that room that day. And at that day, he told us to reclaim the finish line. And I bring that up because right now, and Jill Biden said, if you watched the convention last night, I know everyone on this breakfast this morning watched the convention last night. Dr. Jill Biden talked about her husband healing their family and talked about the importance of their partnership working together. And when we think about where we are as a country, I'm sure there are other moments in history and periods in time where our country needed healing and needed somebody to step up. But when I think about what's happening right now in America, and when I think about what's happening in the world right now, we are dealing with a pandemic. In that in itself is a daunting task. The last time in this country we dealt with a pandemic was 1917, 1918, the Spanish flu. On top of that, we're dealing with lack of financial stability or concern about the financial situation here in the country. And we're also dealing with racism and race relations that, quite honestly, really haven't been dealt with to the magnitude they need to since the civil rights movement. And we have a president that's in the White House that has no interest in moving our country forward. His only interest is his own self-interest, and his self-interest is taking our country backwards. And we have a unique opportunity here today and coming up in the next couple months with Joe Biden, with Kamala Harris, as leaders who really generally care about the future of our country and care about Americans in this country. Joe Biden cares about Democrats. Joe Biden cares about Republicans. Joe Biden cares about independents. Joe Biden cares about the economy. Joe Biden cares about the environment. Joe Biden cares about the working people. Joe Biden cares about making sure that we have a country that's a strong country and a country that's beloved in the world. And as we think about the stories that we talked about earlier, some of you weren't on the Zoom, but hearing those stories about past conventions and hearing those stories about being involved in campaigns, I appreciate and I know the work that everyone does in the Zoom. But we have to dig down deep inside of ourselves. We cannot take this for granted. We cannot assume. I think all of us, if we're betting, we would say, okay, the money's on Biden because Biden-Harris, because they're going to win. But 4 years ago, I was in that convention hall. 4 years ago, I was excited. 4 years ago, we had some great speakers that got up there and rallied the crowd and got people excited about Hillary Clinton. 4 years ago, on election night, we were all devastated. The fact that our candidate got 2 million more votes than Donald Trump, our candidate, who's probably the most qualified ever to run for the history of the presidency, was not elected president. And the reality set in that next morning for me when I was in my office and I brought in some young people that worked with me every day, and they were crying. And I looked at them and I said to them that day, I said, we have an opportunity here. We can either bury our head in the ground or under a pillow, I think I said, for the next 4 years, or we can rise up and do the job that we need to do supporting people here in Boston. And I'm proud to say for the last 3.5 years, those young people are now a little older, and they didn't bury their head under any pillow. and they fought hard to make sure that the people of Boston got the services and the support they needed. And when Donald Trump came against immigrants, we stood up against Donald Trump. When Donald Trump came after women, we stood up and stood with women. When Donald Trump went after any group in the city of Boston, we stood up and we were proud. And we can say that for Massachusetts, and we can say that for the Democratic Party. And now it's our opportunity right now for the next, I think it's 80 days. And whatever, Megan Costello will text me the exact number in a second. Whatever the number of days are, we have to do everything we can. We have to do everything we can to be able to win back the White House. 4 years from today, I'd like to be on a call for the Democratic breakfast. And I'd like for Kate to be able to talk about the credentials and about what the credentials meant in 2000 and what the credentials meant in 2016. But I also want her to be able to talk about the greatest victory in our time that we've been part of. We have an opportunity here to make sure that we do everything that we can to make sure that Joe Biden is the next president of the United States of America and Kamala Harris is the next vice president. So I just want to thank you all, Democrats, for allowing me the opportunity to take a couple minutes today and speak to you. I know that many of you have been diehard Democratic operatives for a long time. I know that you have it in your soul and you have it in your body to be able to go out there. But we really need to make sure that we dig deep here in this one and do everything we can for the next 80 plus days, because the future of our country is at stake. And I know that is said every single election, but I think we also know the stakes are higher in 2020. The stakes are higher right now because of the person that's sitting in Pennsylvania Avenue. And we need to send him an eviction notice on January of 2021. There are 76 days left to the election. It's in the chat. So thank you very much, Gus. I appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, it's great to see you on this Zoom. And I also want to give a shout out to my former colleague, Claire Cronin, who proudly nominated Vice President Biden as the next president of the United States of America from the great state of Massachusetts last night. Thank you, everybody. God bless.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. Just before, I might pull an odd, but Governor Dukakis, can we hear you? I see you, but I'm not sure we can hear you. You may need to hit Governor Dukakis *6. I see him, but I don't hear him. So there we go. Governor.
All set?
All set. So we have a great introducer for the governor, our DNC woman, Sue Thompson.
Thank you so much, Gus. It's an honor and such a great privilege to introduce our next speaker, Governor Michael Dukakis. So many of us participating in this Zoom delegate breakfast know Michael personally, but for those who don't, a little history. He is a lifelong resident of Massachusetts, residing in Brookline with one of our most impressive first ladies of Massachusetts, his wife, Kitty Dukakis. He is the son of immigrant parents from Greece. He graduated from Brookline High School, Swarthmore College, Harvard Law School, and served 2 years in the United States Army. The governor began his political career at the local level as an elected Brookline town meeting member. He won a seat in the Massachusetts legislature in 1962 and served 4 terms in the House, winning re-election by an increasing margin each time he ran. In 1970, he ran statewide as our party's nominee for lieutenant governor, running alongside Boston Mayor Kevin White in that year's gubernatorial race. 4 years later, in 1974, Governor Dukakis came back and won our party's nomination and the election for governor. In that first term, he inherited a record deficit and record high unemployment, and is credited with digging Massachusetts out of one of its worst financial and economic crises. But the effort took its toll, and Governor Dukakis was defeated in the Democratic primary in 1978 by Ed King. But no one ever counts the governor out. And 4 years later, in 1982, in one of the greatest comeback election campaigns, he defeated Ed King. I think everyone that falls in love with the art of campaigning has a campaign or a candidate that hooks them. And for me, it was that one. He was reelected to a third term in 1986 by one of the largest margins in the state's history. This same year, his colleagues in the National Governors Association voted him the most effective governor in the nation. Of course, we in Massachusetts knew that about our governor. So it was no surprise when in 1988, he won the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States. Since June 1991, Governor Dukakis has been a distinguished professor in political science at Northeastern University and a visiting professor at the School of Public Affairs at UCLA. His research has focused on national healthcare policy reform and the lessons that national policymakers can learn from the state reform efforts. He and the late former US Senator Paul Simon authored the book titled How to Get into Politics and Why. And it's designed to encourage young people to think seriously about politics and public service as a career. He has accomplished so much more in public transportation, high-speed rail, education, the environment, and of course, healthcare. He continues to be our campaign whisperer, reminding us that it's about grassroots campaigning, right down to the precinct level, one-to-one, neighbor-to-neighbor outreach, and connecting and building diverse coalitions. He has been a hero to me and a mentor to so many others. On behalf of everyone at our breakfast, and with great pleasure, we welcome the Honorable Michael Dukakis.
Sue, thanks so much. And thank you for that lovely introduction. I'll try to keep this reasonably brief, and I'm sorry I'm not as technologically competent as I should be. I thought my son was going to be here this morning to help me with his Zoom stuff, but didn't make it. So this is going to have to be voice only. Just want to say to all of you what you already know. This has to be one of the most critical elections in the history of the United States. We've got somebody in the White House who never should have gotten there. He gets worse by the day, by the minute. And this is an opportunity for us to go out working together, coming together, as we already are, and racking up a major victory which will transform the politics of this country. I've never seen anything quite like what's been going on under Trump. He's a terrible president, and he's a terrible person, and the combination is deadly. I think this is an opportunity for all of us not only to reach out to people we know all over the country, and we must do that, but I was very encouraged by the results in the midterms, and especially the turnout among young people. I teach these kids. They're wonderful. They want to get into public life. They want to get into public service. And they're an inspiration to me and to all of us who work with them. But this is an election where we've got to get young people in this country out as much as they possibly can under the circumstances and really turn out the vote. And I hope we're all going to be doing that, not just Massachusetts, but across the country. Whoever you know, whoever is somebody that you can reach out to, let's do it. Because those phone calls, and that kind of personal connection is just so important. It's not knocking on somebody's door, but it's the next best thing. Kitty joins me in sending you our best. We're still going strong, and we're getting well into our mid and late 80s. And I just want you to know, in case you've forgotten, that November the 3rd happens to be my 87th birthday. The best birthday present I could get would be a resounding Democratic victory on that day. And I hope we're all going to be out there doing everything we can to make it possible. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all that you do. And let's have a very good November the 3rd. Thanks, Sue, so much for that introduction.
Governor, thank you so much. And I know everyone on this call wants to make sure that we give you a great birthday present.
Thanks, Gus.
So thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you for joining.
Okay.
Um,
Great.
our next host, one of the other hosts of this morning's breakfast is Speaker DeLeo. Speaker DeLeo became Speaker at the height of the global economic downturn in 2009. His focus on jobs and the economy led to the passage of a number of economic development measures that have contributed to job growth and success for the Commonwealth. In 2014, Speaker DeLeo crafted and helped it pass the first major changes to the Massachusetts gun laws since the 1990s. In addition to this comprehensive nation-leading gun safety law, he has made gun safety a top priority through subsequent legislation to ban bump stocks, prevent individuals who pose a risk of causing bodily injury to themselves or others from owning or possessing a firearm, and focusing on urban gun violence as a public health issue. Under his leadership, the House also increased funding to support high-quality education and care programs across the state. Over the past several years, the House has supported efforts to bolster the early education and care workforce through partnerships with Massachusetts Community College. Over the past 3 years, the House budget provided a total of $55 million to increase rates for early educator salaries, the highest increase in Massachusetts history. An award-winning legislator, Speaker DeLeo seeks to empower individuals, families, and communities by focusing on legislation that keeps communities safer, creates jobs, and increases educational opportunities for people of all backgrounds. Under his leadership, the House passed nation-leading legislation related to early education and care, healthcare, the opioid crisis, economic development, gun safety, veterans benefits, criminal justice reform, clean energy, and civil rights. A graduate of Boston Latin School, he earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Northeastern and a Juris Doctorate from Suffolk Law School. He received his honorary doctorate of law from Suffolk in 2009 and an honorary degree from Salem State in 2012. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the other co-host of this morning's breakfast, Speaker DeLeo.
Thank you very much, Gus, for that extremely kind introduction. And it's always great to join my good friend, obviously the mayor, former governor, or I should say always Governor Michael Dukakis, who had my son in school, by the way, at Northeastern University. And my son had stated that he was one of the toughest teachers, his professors that he had ever had. And by the way, Governor, he's still not married, which is a question you have to that one of those other lovely students which you had. It's also great to welcome the members of the congressional delegation, Keating, Kennedy, and Presley, who do such an amazing job in Washington, and to see all of welcome all of the delegates to this year's convention. It's great to be talking to you, and it's quite a different convention, I think, this year than what we are used to. We are all having to get used to doing things a little bit differently these days. That's what the party is doing with this convention. Those speeches last night and Monday were terrific, although delivered not quite the same as in the past. I can tell you that from my perspective, this is a step up for me. You may remember back in 2012, I think it was, I had the opportunity to talk to the delegates, and most of my speech was talking to a vacant chair at the time. So for me, this is a step up. But that's what we do as Democrats. We listen to science and we adjust. In Massachusetts, we in the House have developed a way to hold remote sessions, passed a flurry of legislation responding to COVID-19, and advanced bills relating to police reform, education, transportation, climate change just a couple of weeks ago, and much more. But in Washington, unfortunately, at least in the White House, things are different. I just never thought we'd see the things that we've seen from this White House over the last 4 years. The anger, the hostility, and let's be honest, the abject mishandling of the pandemic have been the worst examples of executive leadership in my lifetime. 5 months into this pandemic, we have a president who still, to this day, doesn't know how to handle it, how to be empathetic, how to unite us, and how to care about people, which is most concerning to me. How to care about people is something that he just can't seem to grasp. Thankfully, we have a nominee in Joe Biden who understands all of those things. Vice President Biden is a skilled public servant who has developed a pool of knowledge and array of skills that will make him adept at dealing with executive agencies, the defense and intelligence establishment in Congress. But he's also spent a lifetime representing constituents, working for the communities and helping families. Both his heart and his head make him the right nominee for this moment. Over the last couple of nights, we've heard about Joe's plan to protect America from COVID-19 and rebuilding the economy. And last night we saw Representative Claire Cronin, who I'm so very, very proud of, talk about our state support for Joe. He cares about growing jobs and strengthening our manufacturing sector, things we focused on over the years here in Massachusetts. We understand how he will help unite America and provide leadership to our country. I have faith in Joe Biden. How can I have so much certainty? Well, I can tell you that a few years back, right here in Boston, he was here for a visit, I believe was at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute. We had a few minutes to talk. At that point, I introduced myself to him. And he said to me at that time, "You're the type of person I want to meet. You have the toughest job in Massachusetts." And all of us who were there, myself, he and Vicky and others, all laughed at that comment. It was that time that I knew how intelligent that Joe Biden was and understood state and local government. That was such a special moment for me. Not because he said something nice to me, although that was important. And of course, he's a very gracious man, unlike the current occupant of the White House. But because he shows his compassion and understanding of people. And importantly, he understands the importance of states which have borne the brunt and the pain of the pandemic. And we have borne the brunt of the pain of the last 4 years. This is a time when much of the federal government, including the incumbent president, seems to be at war with the states. So as we go into tonight and into the November election, we have a terrific nominee. And we have a great running mate as well with Kamala Harris. Joe Biden's going to have a vice president who brings energy and vision to this ticket. This is a team that can represent America and take on the president and his minions and restore us to lead us to victory and restore our country. I can remember where I was 4 years ago when I was following the campaigns of many of the state representatives running throughout the state. And it was about 11 o'clock or so when someone had said to me, "You better follow this presidential election. Donald Trump may win this election." I said, you've got to be kidding me. This can't happen. This can't happen here in America with such a qualified candidate as Hillary Clinton at the time. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing when some of the results were coming in from Michigan, I believe it was. That's a feeling that I had 4 years ago. And that's a feeling I do not want to have again. Because I know that with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we have a ticket that's going to restore the faith and confidence in this country. And those around the world will look differently in terms of what the United States of America is all about. So again, let's take back America. And again, thank you for listening.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate having you here. All right, so we will move on. We are going to go to our DNC member, Mel Poindexter.
And hello, everyone. I have the honor this morning of introducing to our Massachusetts delegation, Desiree Timms, who was one of our mobilized mass candidates. Now, Desiree was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, and is a proud product of Dayton Public Schools. Inspired by her grandfather, who was forced to leave school at the age of 6 to support his family as a sharecropper in the Deep South. Desiree became the first in her family to earn a 4-year college degree. Desiree is a graduate of Dayton High School, Xavier University, and Georgetown Law School. While an undergrad at Xavier University, Desiree volunteered for the 2008 Obama presidential campaign in Southwest Ohio. Her experience led her to serve in the White House during President Obama's first presidential term. Following her time in the White House, Desiree worked on Capitol Hill with 2 U.S. Senators, Sheldon Brown of Ohio and Kirsten Gillibrand of New York. Members of the Senate Black Legislative Staff Caucus elected Desiree to serve as their president. While on Capitol Hill, Desiree advanced important policy issues, including reauthorizing the Farm Bill, minimum wage, affordable child care, healthcare, and climate change. This work solidified her passion for public policy and advocacy for everyday workers and inspired Desiree to serve in senior advisory roles with the League of Conservative Voters and Child Care Awareness. Desiree is running in Ohio's 10th district, currently occupied by Republican Mike Turner. I want to ask everyone to give a Massachusetts warm welcome to Desiree Timms, who is one of the people that we as Massachusetts are putting our support behind. Thank you, Desiree, and welcome to Massachusetts.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I am so thrilled and honored to spend my morning with you guys and glad that you guys are spending your morning with me. I'm Desiree Timms, Democrat for Congress here based in Dayton, Ohio, running for Congress for the 10th District. I am so excited to share my story and tell you a little bit about my campaign. I am running against an entrenched Republican. I'm running against someone who enabled Trump during impeachment, who bullied Lieutenant Colonel Vanderman, who disrespected Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, and who walked out on Fiona Hill when they were trying to talk about what we needed to do to save our country. Unfortunately, we are at a moment right now in history, we're at a crossroads where we have to make decisions that will save this democracy. And that's why I got off the sidelines to fight the good fight, or as our forever Congressman John Lewis would say, to make good trouble. I'm born and raised in the industrial Midwest. My grandfather was a sharecropper in the Jim Crow Deep South. He picked cotton. He was forced to drop out of school in the first grade at the age of 6 to work the fields, to pick cotton, to contribute to household expenses. On that first grade education, he was able to migrate to Ohio in the late 1940s and earn a good job working in the factories and steel mills here. Climb his way to the middle class, buy a home, afford a car, and to really live a good life. He understood the dignity of work. Right now, there are people in this country with graduate degrees who can't climb their way to the middle class. Right now, in my hometown where I live in Dayton, in the house that my grandfather bought on that first grade education, I live in a food desert. I have to drive 30 minutes to get to a decent grocery store, but I can get a Snickers bar down the street. I moved back home after serving this country in the Obama administration and on Capitol Hill for Sherrod Brown and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, thinking I would take the bar exam, work at a firm, and move forward. The weekend I moved home, the KKK marched downtown Dayton. 3 days later, we had 15 tornadoes that ripped through our city and suburbs. A few months after that, we had a mass shooting the day after El Paso. 9 lives. At the very bar I was going out to that night to toast to announcing my campaign. But for a friend saying, "We always go to Peppers, let's go somewhere else," I would have been in the bar where the shooting occurred. I'm only 32. I did not go to high school and middle school and elementary school taking active shooter drills. But we're training our kids right now to prepare for a mass shooting. When I was in school, we prepared for a fire, stop, drop, and roll, or a tornado, put your hands behind your neck. We're teaching our children to prepare for mass shootings. When I was in high school, I learned I had the same history textbook as a 4th grader on the other side of the tracks, attending private school. When I was in high school, my mother's classmates' names were etched in our textbooks. 20 years later, that's what's happening with public education in this country. We're not investing. We're picking and choosing based on zip codes and socioeconomic backgrounds, and yes, race, on what certain people get. But we're all paying tax dollars. We all want the same things. We're all marching forward, but people like Trump and his enablers are trying to hold us back. But we won't go back. We'll continue to march forward. My Republican opponent just went up on TV yesterday spreading lies about me, tying me to a Republican dark money scheme that he himself has taken tens of thousands of dollars. This is what they're doing to American voters. They're spreading lies. They're snatching our mailboxes. They're using voter suppression tactics to stop people from voting. I'm the first African-American Democratic nominee in Southwest Ohio. I'll be the first woman to represent this district as well. We have an opportunity to make history. In my district, African-American voter turnout in 2012 was at 74%, and in 2018, 43%. So we have work to do. We have 5 colleges and universities in my district. 2 are historically Black colleges and universities. We have to make sure that every voice is heard and every vote is counted, and that we move forward and we bust the lies and the myths about voting so that people can show up, so that we can save this country, so that we can build back better, and so that we can have Madam Vice President Kamala Harris in the White House marching beside the 46th president, Joe Biden. So I'm optimistic. And as I tell people, I know when you're watching CNN and MSNBC and listening to talk radio and reading the newspapers that you're exhausted. I know that it wears on your soul and that you are weary. But we cannot afford to be tired because we have a lot of work to do. And I am so grateful that you guys have adopted me as a candidate and that you guys are helping us mobilize and organize voters and people around this country like we've never had before. Because as the saying goes, as goes Ohio, goes the White House. This is a very important race. We have to flip my seat. We flip my seat blue. We help deliver Ohio to Joe Biden. I have one of the largest pivot counties in the state. We have an opportunity to make history, to make change and to get our country back on track. Thank you guys so much for joining me, for listening to me, for adopting me, and for supporting my candidacy so that I can become the next Congresswoman from Ohio's 10th Congressional District. I look forward to staying in touch, and I hope you have a wonderful convention this morning.
Woohoo! Thank you so much. I wish everybody were able to experience the whole room, but they're all clapping in the screen so you can see it. So thank you. We look forward to that. Now it's my great honor to introduce Brenda Brathwaite, who will on Friday be a Democratic National.
Hey, Gus, I think we had a slight, just really quickly, I think we had a slight schedule change, and I think we're going to Karen Payne.
Okay, so I'm going to another person who is going to become a member of the DNC on Friday, Karen Payne.
Good morning, Democrats. As a new DNC member, this is not how I pictured my first convention, but hearing from these amazing speakers, especially Desiree, she moved it this morning, paints a clear picture of what to expect for November. We are fired up, we're ready to work, and willing to fight to win together. One fighter I'm glad to have represent me is Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Ayanna Pressley is an advocate, a policymaker, an activist, and a survivor. On November 6, 2018, Ayanna was elected to represent Massachusetts in the 7th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives, making her the first woman of color to be elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Hear, hear. Born in Cincinnati and raised in Chicago, Ayanna moved to Boston, Massachusetts in 1992 to attend Boston University, working as an aide to Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy II and later Senator John Kerry. Ayanna's professional life mirrored her personal commitment to service and lifting the voices of those in her community. In 2009, she launched a historic at-large campaign for Boston City Council and won, becoming the first woman of color elected to the council in its 100th history. On the council, Congresswoman Pressley worked to partnership with residents, advocates, and other elected officials to combat inequalities and disparities facing the community. In Congress, Ayanna has been dedicated to the kind of bold activist leadership she emphasized throughout her groundbreaking campaign. She has introduced legislation to ensure fair compensation for low-wage workers, to support survivors of sexual assault and harassment, and to fundamentally reimagine our criminal justice legal system, among others. And she has been to imagine a criminal justice system and a voice to advocate communities, leading of future transportation caucus, protect reproductive rights, and to hold the White House accountable. Ayanna lives in Hyde Park, a neighborhood of Boston. Savonia Truth. Welcome, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Democrats. Good morning, Massachusetts Democrats. As hard as it is to not be able to join in community physically in the interest of the public health, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to be with you in virtual community. And I'm going to deviate from my brief remarks for a moment just to say something about community. And Desiree, we're so excited to have adopted you. And I know something about being adopted by this activist community. Karen, thank you for that introduction. And thank you for your activism and for your friendship throughout the years. And I just want to say that the activist leadership that I ran my congressional campaign on, and that I hope that I embody and actively demonstrate every day, I can do that because of my mother's incredible example as a tenants' rights organizer, as a community activist, but because when I came here to Massachusetts, not knowing a soul, I was embraced by this Democratic activist community, by people like Gus and Teddy and Sue and Marie Turley and the Ashtons and the Poindexters and Faye Morrison and Louis Elisa and Marty Exafaris and MJ Powell and Pat Deal and Joe Kaplan, Kate Donahue, and I could go on and on and on. Folks who I think a clipboard is a permanent appendage to their bodies. So I just want to say thank you. There's so many more names that I could name, but in the interest of time, and we've already shuffled the program, I won't do that. But I just wanted to say how grateful I am. It is very surreal that the congressional district that I started out in the office as an unpaid intern 25 plus years ago, working 3 paid jobs to do that unpaid internship, that now I have the humbling honor of being the Congresswoman representing that district. And that has everything to do with the training and the mentorship that I received from so many of you. So thank you for pouring into me. You know that all politics is local because you know all organizing is local. And so I am so grateful to be here with all of you today. Thank you for making the choice intentionally every day to take a stakehold in our democracy, especially in this moment, when our country is at such a crossroads, at such an inflection point. Now, Massachusetts has always been a national leader on healthcare, marriage equality, gun control, and so much more. And our leadership, our pace setting is needed now more than ever. We've been the foot soldiers for this entire Democratic Party being deployed throughout this country, critical to so many pivotal elections. And that is true now, when this is the most consequential election of our lifetimes. Today, our communities are facing overlapping crises of public health, economic inequality, and systemic racism. These crises have been exacerbated by an occupant. And to be clear, I've always referred to Donald Trump as the occupant of the White House, not because I dishonor the Oval Office, but because he does. He is void of empathy. He lacks the compassion, the intellect, the strategy to hold that seat. And that is why I refer to him as the occupant. And with your support, we will ensure that he is a temporary occupant and that he is evicted in November. But while we are dealing with these conflated crises exacerbated by Trump and his administration, the White House and Republicans in Congress, who at every opportunity have turned their backs on the American people and chosen to instead advance bigoted, racist, xenophobic policies with this administration and their policies, the cruelty is the point. And when it comes to their culture, the corruption is the point. Their cruelty and criminal negligence have cost us hundreds of thousands of American lives, lives that could have been saved. Now, as we look ahead to November, those same people, now they're attacking the United States Postal Service and doing everything they can to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of Americans, particularly Black and Brown Americans. The occupant of the White House, he knows that his failures are on the ballot. And the only way that he can hold on to power is to cheat and to steal. This is voter suppression, plain and simple. Nothing but modern day jelly bean counting. So this November, the stakes could not be higher. And it is incumbent on all of us to ensure that Democrats not only take back the White House, but also regain control of the Senate and increase our majority in the House. We must elect Democrats up and down the ballot who will legislate our values. I always say that policy is my love language. And I'm proud as a freshman member to have introduced more bills than any other member of my class in this 116th Congress. And the reason why I'm so focused on strategy is because the disproportionate hurt, hate, and harm that marginalized communities have experienced, it didn't just happen. It was legislated. It was codified through lawmaking. So if hate, hurt, and harm can be legislated, so too can healing, equity, and justice. With Joe Biden and Senator Harris, we have the opportunity to show the strength of this movement and elect leaders who are compassionate, invested in working in partnership, committed to making real progress towards the systemic change our communities so desperately need. And as we talk about the centennial of the 19th Amendment, that it took Black women 55 years from that moment to have the right to vote. And then here today, we have a Black woman on the ballot. How important it is as vice president that we have leaders that are in proximity to hurt, that the people closest to the pain should be the closest to the power, driving and informing the policymaking. This is such an important statement, especially considering that Black women have been the most reliably voting constituency for the Democratic Party. I'm so proud of this ticket, but that is just the beginning of our work. Joe and Kamala, they are the door. They're not the destination. It's still on us to organize, to mobilize, and to legislate policies in deep partnership with community, which advance racial, economic, education, transit, housing, healthcare, and environmental justice for all of our communities. My heart swells as activists, organizers, agitators, and community builders have taken to the streets and the halls of power in the past several months to demand systemic change. Indeed, this is the only way that change has ever been ushered in. The Voting Rights Act of 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1965, Congress takes the credit, but that change was ushered in because of the laboring and love, the personal sacrifices, and the sweat equity of so many everyday Americans, people just like you. So the charge for us now is to turn this culture shift at this moment of inflection as a country, into a power shift. We're in the midst of a national reckoning, which demands a reconstruction. That the normal that predated this time was insufficient, unjust, and inadequate to begin with. It is not a normal that we want to return to. So this moment of reckoning is also an opportunity for reconstruction. And I need all of you to be community builders in that. Now that work will require unprecedented organizing, unprecedented mobilizing, and unprecedented hope. Between now and November, each of us must do everything we can to engage people in our community, to expand the electorate, to not make assumptions about who desires and deserves a seat at the table of democracy. Talk to everyone and make clear the stakes of this election. So thank you. Thank you for being here today, for taking a stake in our democracy, and for committing to partnership and civic engagement during the most consequential election of our lifetimes. Our work is just getting started.
Congresswoman, thank you so much. Just such inspiring words. I know everybody here is clapping in the windows, so thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. So now we will go to Brenda Brathwaite, who will also on Friday become one of our new DNC members.
Yes, and thank you to the Brathwaites, also mentors. Thank you all. Leon, Brenda, thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really proud this morning to be introducing my congressman, the congressman from the 9th Congressional District, Bill Keating. Congressman Keating was first elected to Congress with the strong organizational support of the MassDems and Vice President Biden during the tough red wave election of 2010. Entering Congress with a mandate to defend Obamacare, he has never stopped fighting for our right to health care and is currently a co-sponsor of Medicare for All. A former district attorney, state senator, and state representative, Bill is also a 20-plus year member of the Democratic State Committee and proudly represented Massachusetts on the Democratic National Committee for a number of years. In Congress, Bill currently serves as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Europe, Eurasia, Energy, and Environment, where in between hearings, grilling Trump appointees on their involvement in the Ukraine scandal, Putin's bounties for American troops, and other international issues, he was honored to invite Greta Thunberg and several other youth climate activists to talk to Congress about the need for climate action, including a Green New Deal. Congressman Keating is joining us today from his home in Bourne, where he lives with his wife, Tevis, and their 2 Maltese dogs, Moby and Mia. And just one small caveat. I really appreciate Congressman Keating, who's one of those folks who comes to the vineyard in the off season, not just the summer. You can find him here talking to constituents around veterans affairs, climate change, healthcare, housing, and the unique needs of rural communities. Please join me in giving a warm Massachusetts Democratic Party welcome to Congressman Keating. He's muted.
There you go.
No, thank you, Brenda. I really appreciate it. We're working on the mail situation. Sent a letter to the Postmaster General that's unique to the vineyard. And we've worked on access issues, and it's truly a special place. And your work has been phenomenal. That access of being on an island hasn't stopped you at all. And I also want to give a shout out to Kate Donahue and Sue Thompson, two of my colleagues that I worked with in many capacities as they're winding down their activities. And thank you, Gus, for organizing this. If you hear a little thing in the background, I put off the workers on my home. We have repairs. I apologize for that. I thought it would be done by now. I want to thank Governor Dukakis and Speaker DeLeo and Marty Walsh for their work. Particularly, we're trying to get some aid to our state and to our cities and towns, which Mitch McConnell prefers to just let people and let these entities and the people, the frontliners, just go bankrupt. Yesterday was a big day. And if you hear the pounding, I'm sorry, I told them to delay it. We sort of shifted the schedule here. But yesterday was a big day, not just because we showed the Postmaster General, who's starting to back down, that the people have a voice in this government. And we're not going to let it get derailed by a president who can't seize control of 50 different secretaries of state and elected, but is using his power in the federal government to manipulate our elections through the influence in the post office. And also is a big day because we nominated Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is the antidote and the cure for everything I'm going to just dwell on here for a few minutes. Yesterday was a big day for another reason. You know, it was a media dump by the Republicans. They took this moment because they have control of how they're going to issue a report, and they dumped it in the middle of the Democratic convention. It's critical that everyone reads this report and becomes familiar with it. It's extraordinary. The Senate Republican-controlled Intelligence Committee said yesterday that indeed the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia. They've gone further than the Mueller report. And these are Republicans that have done this because they can control how the message came about and how the report was dropped, but they can't control what the facts are. And these were the facts. The facts were the Trump campaign did indeed coordinate with the Russians to affect our elections and attack our democracy at the most fundamental basis. And it showed in detail how this was done. It went further, and it showed that Donald Trump lied. What a surprise. But he lied to the FBI about his involvement with Russia. They detail that, saying that he didn't coordinate with WikiLeaks. And indeed, through Roger Stone, he was doing just that same thing. And the report indicates that. Of course, we knew that in Helsinki, and we see it today when he won't speak up as bounties are put on the heads of our soldiers. He won't speak up when Russia is involved dealing with giving arms and unsettling activities and using a paramilitary group, the Wagner group, in Crimea with aggression, and even to this day in Afghanistan. Could you imagine for a second if Barack Obama, if a report came out from the Intelligence Committee of the Senate that Barack Obama had coordinated with the Russians in their elections, in our elections? Could you imagine if Barack Obama lied to the FBI about his campaign and his own involvement in the Russian attack on our democracy? Think about that for a second. But we've become immune to these things because of all the other actions of Donald Trump. You know, I think as you look at this, I've been in an unusual set of circumstances since I've been in Congress. I've been the lead Democrat on trips, congressional trips to Russia and the Middle East, and had to speak up. I've had to look dictators right in the eye and speak up to them and say that if you want help from the United States, if you want our support, then you can't jail members of the press. You can't trample on people's civil rights. And it was hard to do that. And they were angry when I said those words. But I could speak as a representative of the United States of America because we held these values. We walked the walk, not just talked the talk. Do you know how hard that is to do now? You could not really do it with a straight face because they'll talk about, well, what about fake news? What about what your president said? What about what your president did? Joe Biden is just so essential at this moment in history because on day one, he understands this. He'll stick up for our friends and he will fight and stand up and not cower down to Putin or any of our enemies in this world. He has this moment. Sometimes the moment finds you. This is the moment for Joe Biden. It's a moment for us. We just can't ignore these issues. The Republicans that I serve with in the House and the Senate, their strategy is ignore and wait, whether it's the gun issue, gun violence issue, whether it's our civil rights issues. And now this administration, that's their strategy as we're approaching in the next few months, 200,000 Americans dead from the coronavirus. This is why what we're doing is so important right now. And this is what we're facing. We have a president that betrayed his country. Think of those words I'm saying. I don't use them lightly. Who has betrayed his country, who's betrayed us as Americans. Joe Biden will stand up and correct this day one. Our greatest threat to our security and as a result, our economy rests not from outside right now, but from inside our own country. So yesterday was an important day, a day that we nominated the person, day one, that will change this, and a day where those of us that care about our country, Democrats and Republicans alike, have to speak up. I will give you this prediction about next week in the Republican convention. They will be playing the strategy of Putin next week. They will be putting a cloud over the Russian involvement in our elections. They'll be saying it was China or Iran or could have been anyone, could have been a 400-pound person sitting in their bed or their couch. And they're going to be casting aspersions that have been totally disproved. In this intelligence report by the Republicans yesterday that was released, the Ukraine was involved, and therefore all that they're doing with this report with Rudy Giuliani and U.S. Attorney Dunham and our own Attorney General, who is undercutting our own rule of law, will be foisting upon us in this election. We have got to make sure that we're clear with the American people. Don't lose this issue. And I'll be there fighting with you to do it. And I'll be so proud to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris fighting with us. So thank you for everything you're doing. This is a moment, this is a time, and this is important. And I spend countless hours with our allies. I've had over 200 meetings since I was chair of the subcommittee that I'm chair of in Foreign Affairs, with personal meetings with world leaders, our allies mostly, telling them that what Donald Trump is saying and doing doesn't represent what the United States feels. And I've given them encouragement that this will change and that will change this fall. Let's all work together to make sure those words are true. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Congressman Keating. Powerful words, such an important moment. Our next speaker has a hard deadline. We will be hearing from Senator Markey tomorrow, but for now, we've got Congressman Joe Kennedy, who is currently the representative from the 4th Congressional District and serves as, in his 4th term. And we are so lucky to have you here today, Congressman Joe Kennedy.
Gus, thank you. Pleasure to be with you, Tootie. Good to see you. Bunch of good friends on my smaller version of Hollywood Squares thing as we're running around in a van. But President Hurst, good to see you. Kathy Gasparini, Joe, another good old friend named Joe out there too. Grateful for all of you guys for being here, and Ola Gladys as well. Listen, a couple things that I wanted to just say right off the bat. One, I think that roll call we saw last night made me proud. Made me proud to be a Democrat, made me proud of our country, made me proud about what this moment is about bringing as many different people from as many different places and as many different walks of life together around the basic values of what we stand for as Democrats: dignity, around threading those common aspects of our humanity together to use government to fight for every single person. And to see that diversity, to see the different highlights of our country from every corner of it was, I think, a special moment. Second, we saw the leadership from our party, from newly elected members to some of our standard bearers. And what we miss in leadership overseas with Secretary Kerry, who did a fantastic job, to obviously the First Lady, former First Lady, who stole the show on Monday night. I had the dubious honor back in 2016 of following up Michelle Obama on the speaking stage, which most of you probably don't know because it was the shortest speech in convention history, because I was there to introduce Elizabeth Warren. And I was backstage, and you're just looking at it. You obviously can't see anything, so I was looking on a tiny little monitor. And I remember greeting her as she walked out on stage. And I remember listening to the speech when she talked about raising her two little girls in the White House built by slaves. And this just unbelievably poignant line and message, and how terrified I was to have to go up on stage after that speech. And you again saw why on Monday night, and what leadership we have in this country, what leadership we have as Democrats, and what we miss in this moment. And I'm proud to be able to join you all. I'm proud of all that you have done and what you continue to do to push a Democratic Party here in Massachusetts to make it bigger and bolder and more inclusive and more fair, because we need it. And we need it at this moment more than any, because I believe that what we've seen from this moment is that our normal is broken. We have a society that not only has allowed over 5 million people to get sick and over 170,000 people that have died, 45 million folks that have lost their jobs, a country that let George Floyd die. And this moment of reckoning that we now have a choice, a conscious choice as to whether we are going to rebuild and reinvest and actually invest in every single person, every single corner of our country, the way that Congresswoman Presley so articulately laid out, or whether we're going to choose to just go back to the way it was and hope that that was enough, to understanding that because of COVID-19, because of the inequities in our society, COVID-19 was able to grab hold in the cracks and crevices and highlight those inequities and exacerbate them. We've seen small business revenue fall by over 40%, yet Amazon stock price rose by over 60%. We've seen record profits from Walmart and Home Depot, while Main Street has been absolutely devastated. We have a chance and a choice now to go actually build something better. And that's what we are called to do, and that's what we will do, because that is our history. That is particularly our history as a Democratic Party and as Democrats. And I want to close with two stories. One, from about 2 months ago, when some advocates walked me through a homeless camp on the woods by Route 2 in Arlington. And I met with some of the residents there. And one of the gentlemen, the advocate, asked him to share his story. It was a Saturday morning about 10 a.m., Gus, and he told me that he had had a heart attack 2 days before. And he was back in the woods 2 days later because he said, "This is where I feel most comfortable." And that line has stuck with me because it's not a reflection of him, but it is a reflection of our society and the way that he felt we treated him. And a state with 98% healthcare, and a state that has, by many measures, generous wraparound services, but still the place that he felt most comfortable 2 days after a heart attack was in a tent in the woods. and to know that we can do better than that. And we can be better than that. I was in Pittsfield earlier this, I guess later last week, whatever day it is now. And they've had a problem because they've had to close one of their shelters, and they just closed an emergency residence that they had. And so people are sleeping in a park. And the owner of the general store there said, every day somebody will come by with literally spare change and a couple of bucks and ask for a sandwich or ask for food. And what else are you gonna do? We'll give them something to eat. But she said it's heartbreaking watching people come in here and try to just get basic sustenance. And a business owner stopped in and said, whenever somebody comes by and asks for food, just put it on my tab. I'll cover it. We are a good people. We have good people across the state that are willing to fight and sacrifice and scrap and scrape and claw for our neighbors and our friends and a stranger. They need a government that is as good and decent as they are. And that's what this fight is about. And there's nobody more capable of leading that than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm so excited for what this ticket means. I'm so excited for what their values demonstrate and for what that will say to people across this country and people around the world. We're just somebody that is good and decent and believes in our humanity and all of the messiness of it and all of the contradictions of it. But it understands that our place in this moment in our history is to fight and strive for something better. And we will, with all your help. Thanks so much, everybody. Stay well, be well. We'll see you on the trail.
Thank you so much, Congressman Kennedy. Much appreciated for your time. And then for those that didn't hear me earlier, again, we will have Senator Markey on tomorrow. We have one more speaker. Our next speaker needs a very short introduction. She served as Secretary of State for President Obama, was a US Senator from New York, and as First Lady for the majority of the 90s. She went to Wellesley College, and as we all remember, was the first woman nominated for president from the United States by a major political party, and she won the popular vote in 2016. I was lucky enough to serve on her campaign for 8 months in 2007 and 2008, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Hello, all of you Massachusetts Democrats. And thanks so much, Gus, for that introduction and for your leadership as party chair. Thanks also to Executive Director Veronica Martinez and Treasurer Kathy Gasparin. You know, after 4 difficult years, to put it mildly, it is so exciting to see the energy, enthusiasm, and unity behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. This is such a historic moment. Just 100 years ago yesterday, Tennessee became the last state needed to ratify the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. And that was the culmination of a decades-long fight. Most of the women who first took up that fight never lived to see it completed. And yes, that victory was critically important, but it was also incomplete. It would take another long period of time to expand the franchise beyond only white women, to educate a new generation of voters about their rights, and to combat the voter suppression that continues at a fever pitch even now. But just think, tonight, Kamala Harris, a Black woman, the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, will accept our party's nomination for vice president. And together with Joe Biden, she will help lead our country in this moment of national crisis and help us build back better. After 4 years of feeling heartsick, I look at what our party is doing and the people we have chosen to lead this ticket, and I feel so much hope. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the team to lead us. As the suffragists used to say, forward through the darkness, forward into the light. But they can't do it without our help. I want to thank each and every one of you for your work in the trenches with the Massachusetts Democratic Party. Gus, thank you for your leadership that has contributed so much to your recent victories, flipping legislative states from red to blue. The grassroots energy at the state and local level will be a powerful force in this election, and it will help candidates up and down the ballot. But you know as well as I, we cannot take anything or anyone for granted. We have to run as hard as we can between now and November, especially because, as you know, the other side will stop at nothing to win. But I know firsthand the talent and support that volunteers from the Bay State can provide to giving us the victories we need. So I hope you will continue to use your time, money, and energy to adopt crucial races all across our country, as well as driving up the margin of victory at home. Thank you all so much for what you have done, are doing, and will do to make sure Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are our next president and vice president. Thank you all.
Yay, thank you. All right, that is the end of our program, our public program. We will go into our question and answers for tonight's drive-in and any other questions that people may or may not have.
Thank you, Hillary Clinton,